Welcome to the season finale. Yo, what's up, world? Welcome back to the channel. APW Sports signing in, and welcome to another episode of Chicago Bears Weekly. This will be the season finale of season 3, episode 11. And the draft has now concluded. The Bears have made all of their draft picks. So in today's episode, we're going to grade each draft pick, and then we are going to grade the whole draft just as a whole. We're just going to grade the draft, the entire Bears draft class as a whole. But before I get into this video, make sure you guys are staying safe out there and helping us get back to normal as quick as possible. And a special thank you to those first responders, the healthcare workers, the essential workers, the police officers, the firemen, etc. A huge thank you to you guys. You guys are the real true heroes during this just crazy time in this country. But let's take care of some business at hand and dive into this episode. So, without further ado, let's dive into it. As you guys probably already know, the Bears did not have a first round pick, as we used it to acquire this guy. Yes, the one and only Khalil Mack. It goes without saying, I would rather not have a first round pick to have that guy than to have a first round pick this year. But we did have a couple of second round picks, as the Bears' first second round pick was used to select Cole Kmet out of Notre Dame, tight end. He's a big tight end at 6'6", 250 pounds. He's one of those guys that, number one, he's a red zone threat as well. He has some speed on him to be such a big tight end. And with Nagy's system, a tight end is greatly needed and greatly used in his system. So Cole Kmet could be the future of the tight end position for the Bears, depending on how Jimmy Graham works out as well. They did give Jimmy Graham that $8 million contract. And not only that, the Bears now have 10 tight ends on the roster. 10 tight ends, which is kind of makes this pick a little bit questionable. But when you really look deeper into it, it really gives sense that the Bears need some tight end help, because last year the tight ends really did not fare well last season with the injuries to Shaheen and Burton. So the tight end position for the Bears was kind of a need to get somebody good in this draft. And Kmet was the best tight end in this draft. So he was basically a steal for the Bears sitting right there. So the Bears had to capitalize on a position that they use most. Seeing that Jimmy Graham isn't necessarily the Jimmy Graham of old, Cole Kmet can come in and fill the role. And he's also a solid blocking tight end. So the defenses won't be necessarily tipped when he's on the field, because he would be that guy that can block as well. So they won't know he's in for passing situations. So it really helps the offense just kind of be more creative with their play calls. So I give the pick of Cole Kmet, I give it a B-. They probably could have went a little bit offensive line early, but this draft really wasn't so offensive line deep. So I really like the pick of Cole Kmet. I give it a B-. With our second round pick, the Bears selected Jalen Johnson, a defensive back out of Utah. Now, defensive back was one of our biggest struggles defensively last year. So Jalen Johnson can come in and give us some more depth and more stability at that position. He's a guy that has first round talent, but dropped to the second round because of the wide receiver heavy class and the guys that were going to be taken ahead of him. So Jalen Johnson, I think, is another smart pick for the Bears. We did add Artie Burns in the offseason, but I don't look at Artie Burns as more of a long-term answer for the cornerback position. I can see Jalen Johnson kind of filling in and kind of being a Prince of Mukamura type role, where he's the opposite corner on the side of Kyle Fuller. He can hold his own in coverage. Of course, it's going to take some adjustments to the NFL level, but I think Jalen Johnson has the tools to be a really solid and productive player in this league, and he can make contributions right away as a rookie. Within Chuck Pagano's scheme, he's added to an already elite defense. They could maybe flip him to safety. I don't see that happening, but it might be a possibility. But Jalen Johnson is a very, very talented player for them to get at that spot. So I give this pick a B as well. Like I said, a lot of Bear fans are saying, why wouldn't we get offensive line early? But it wasn't really much of a heavy offensive line class. So you have to take your best available player for a need that you have. And I think Jalen Johnson was just that type of a pick. He was a guy that fits the system most, and he's also kind of a need because the cornerback spot was not the greatest in 2019. So I give that pick a B- for the Bears. Our next pick was outside linebacker Travis Gibson out of Tulsa. He's one of those guys that's just going to add some depth to our linebacker position. We did lose Kwiatkowski as well as Kevin Pierre-Louis in free agency. So we needed to shore up some depth within that linebacker position. And we also lost Leonard Floyd, even though we did add Robert Quinn. I think we're going to use him more off of the edge in a hand-down position. And I think Travis Gibson is more of one of those stand-up linebackers where he can go kind of sideline to sideline a bit. He has some speed on him as well. He can also have the ability to be a solid blitzer and rush the passer a bit. So I give this pick a C+. I kind of would have wanted them to see offensive line at this point because offensive line is one of our biggest needs. But it doesn't hurt to add depth to a position that you're strong at. And number two, we did lose some names this offseason, as I previously mentioned. So a guy like Gibson can be one of those people that he does his party plays well and he adds some depth. We did add Barkevious Mingo, so that also helps with some depth with our linebacker position. But he can turn into an edge rusher a bit. I think the Bears are going to use him more as that versus in the inside. Good pick. Solid pick. I really like the pick. We're going to see how this one turns out for the Chicago Bears. Our next pick was Kendall Vidor out of Georgia Southern. This is another depth position for the Bears. They're just adding more depth to the position. I'm kind of disappointed they didn't go offensive line with this pick. I'm not going to lie to you guys. I was kind of waiting for them to add some depth to that offensive line, which wasn't necessarily that great last season. But he's just a guy that's just going to add a bit more depth to the DB core, as we have Burns, we have Fuller, we have Buster Screen and the inside. I think it's going to be more of that fourth or fifth defensive back where you can use him in kind of nickel schemes and dime schemes and things like that. And he can also be a good part on the special teams unit. So I'm going to give this pick a solid C. It's not bad. It's not the greatest to pick because at this point I was really waiting for them to kick some offensive linemen off of the board. But he's not a bad pick. He's just going to help add some depth, and he could possibly add some value to the special teams unit. Our next pick is wide receiver Daryl Mooney out of Tulane. This pick kind of scratched my head a little bit because we already have receivers like Robinson, Miller, we have Mims, we have Riley Ridley, and Cordell Patterson at the wide receiver position. I thought the Bears would probably steer away from the wide receiver position. I thought they were going to give guys like Wims and Ridley more of a shot to play. But Mooney, I think this is the most questionable pick for me, as seeing wide receiver was not necessarily one of the Bears' biggest needs going into this draft. So it's a bit of a head scratcher a bit. He's a very good player. He's a solid player. He's going to add some depth, add some value on the special teams unit, and I think that's more the reason they selected him, is just to add depth and kind of add some special team value. But when you come to really think about it, it's kind of head scratching that we got a receiver when we have a lot of lock jam at that receiver position. So I'm going to give this pick, I'm going to give it a C-. I'm not really a huge fan of the pick. He's not a bad player. I just think the Bears could have used this pick to go elsewhere. So I'm going to give this pick a C- for the value he brings to the Bears, and also detracting a grade or two from really what we need and what we could have added more depth to. So C- is the way I go for this Darnell Mooney pick. Now, the last two picks out of the draft were both offensive linemen. The first pick was Arlington Hambright out of Colorado. The second one was Latavius Simmons from Tennessee State. I'm kind of disappointed that we waited so late to get some offensive line depth, because the Bears offensive line wasn't that great last year, but it did have some injuries with Kyle Long and Massey. So I think getting some guys healthy and getting Fetty in the offseason really helped to kind of add a little bit more of stability to the offensive line. But I would have liked to seen the Bears get some more depth earlier, get a little bit more talented players that had a little bit of higher grade earlier in the draft. But Hambright, I think he's really, really physical. He's a really physical lineman. He's really strong. Coming from a big-time program, he did have some Oklahoma State experience before transferring to Colorado. So he does have that experience playing against big-time talent. Simmons coming from a more smaller school like Tennessee State. They both have some potential to have some good significant playing time within the Bears offensive line. I would just like them to see them select offensive linemen a little bit earlier. But these two picks do add some depth as the backups for the Bears offensive line last year. It really wasn't that great last year. Inserting in for the injured Long and Massey, it really wasn't that great. And you could tell the downfall in the play once Massey and Long were out for the year. So I really give both of these picks, I give them a B. Because number one, they address a need that we have, which is offensive line and offensive line depth. Those two picks really address the need that we have. And they also have potential to have some playing time, because the Bears offensive line wasn't really that great last season. So they have the potential to have some play and step in and fill a role. And they can be also extra linemen for, say, a jumbo package and things like that. So I'll give both of these grades a B, because they both address the need and they add depth to a position where the Bears weren't necessarily strong at in 2019. So I give this a B. Now, the whole draft class overall, I'm going to give it a C+. And the reason I give it a C+ is because we don't really get a lot of talented names off the board. We just, more with these draft picks, I think they address more of our added depth position. Because the Bears are really one of those teams that can win now, but it's all based off quarterback play, of course. So the Bears weren't really going to get that top prospect, that top name with the picks that they had. Those picks were more added to special teams, address some depth needs, and get some guys that can fill in and have a role on the 2020 Chicago Bears team. So I give this one a C+. The whole draft class is a C+. Am I a fan of it? A little bit. They have some questionable ones, especially the Mooney pick. I didn't think a wide receiver was really necessarily needed in this draft. But overall, I can't be too mad at the draft, because the Bears did address needs. They didn't get the best players on the board necessarily because they were a win-now team. So they addressed depth needs and really needs that guys that can just step in a player role at this moment in time for the 2020 season. But that is all I have for you guys. Make sure that you leave a like on this video and tell me your thoughts on the Bears draft class in the comment section below. And also share the video and subscribe to the channel, as that helps the channel to grow. And also follow me on Twitter and Instagram. Both handles are APW Sports, and both will be linked in the description below. But I cannot preach this enough, guys. Make sure you guys are staying safe out there and doing your part to help us return back to normal as soon as possible. You guys stay safe, have a great and excellent day, and I will see you guys next time. Peace out.
I wanna say thank you to my mom and my daddy for making love the night that you had me. Wanna thank my friends, my sister and my brother.